It's time for the Volquest podcast, where we dissect the biggest news items of the week. Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast presented by our friends at Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store, focusing on natural products and organic remedies for a variety of ailments. At Smoky Mountain Organics, we've been talking about them for a while here at Volquest. They've been a great friend of ours. And remember, if you're shopping in store, mention Volquest, you'll get 15% off your total purchase. And they've got 4 stores to serve you. That's Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, and their store in Knoxville on Kingston Pike, just down from Trader Joe's on the opposite side of the street. Or you can shop online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. With Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us on this Tuesday. Plenty to get to. Football recruiting and football as bowl preparation continue. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But Rob Lewis, we've been covering this a long time. It's been a long time since the story about Tennessee athletics was basketball, and it had nothing to do with Tennessee playing a basketball game on Saturday. It was about Tennessee not playing a basketball game on Saturday. Rick Barnes putting a bow tie on the Memphis cancellation on Monday. First of all, start with your takeaway from Rick Barnes. I don't think either one of us are surprised he kind of went the direction he went. Were you?
No, not at all. Without name calling, or mentioning anybody by name, he's made it pretty clear that he felt like Memphis could have played. They didn't want to play shorthanded. And, it's pretty easy to read between the lines. I mean, how many times since Saturday has he referenced former assistant coach Rob Lanier taking his Georgia State team to Rhode Island and playing with like maybe 7 kids, missing 3 starters, or I don't remember what the exact numbers were, but shorthanded, which coach clearly felt Penny Hardaway was not willing to do. Rick even said himself that, what was his quote, that he'd pull kids out of the student body if that's what it took to field a team, because the fans deserve it. So yeah, I kind of told the story a couple of weeks ago about Memphis not being willing to move the game a few years ago to accommodate Tennessee for some scheduling things, and said because of that Tennessee wouldn't play them anymore as long as Rick was here. And you can double down on that now. just take it to the bank.
And I do want to ask this, and you may not know the answer to this. Because they didn't play this game and it's a canceled game, does that mean the contract, that 3-year deal, is over, or is there still another game that has to be played to fulfill that contract? Do you have any idea what the language is there?
That is a great question. I had not even thought about that, or I would have asked Rick that today on Monday. We're recording this on Monday. But I'll tell you, the head coach is acting like he's not playing, that he has played his last game against that program.
Yeah, so, that's my impression too. So my assumption is because Memphis could not fulfill their end of the agreement, that would take and eliminate the last year. I'm not a lawyer, but that's the way I would interpret that.
And I would also interpret it as the fact that Memphis they could have played the game and they chose not to.
Right. Yeah, so they did not fulfill their part of the contract there. You had I thought, just an unbelievable point on the message board on Monday, and I don't want to do 30 minutes or 20 minutes talking about Memphis, but I do want to reference this point because I thought it was a pretty fascinating point that you had. Memphis playing in Brooklyn earlier this year. We all know what you have to do in the state of New York with vaccinations and showing your vaccination card and all those things, in terms of being able to play. Interesting, they played that game. Hardaway says they're 90% vaccinated. Then he comes back and said he misspoke. Now it sounds like hardly any of his team is vaccinated. Kind of bizarre that they played in New York, but they're not a very heavily vaccinated team. But by the interpretation that you have following the fallout from Saturday,
it's really bizarre. And I don't know what Memphis's itinerary was, but how much, any of those events, those holiday tournaments, there's always, some non-basketball events that the sponsors put on, and it's usually pretty classy and pretty fun. But I know from talking to Tennessee's people that Tennessee's like behind the scenes support staff. If they went anywhere, like when they went to a team dinner, when they went and practiced off site, they had like a walkthrough at the New York Athletic Club. They had to have vaccination verification for everybody, player, student manager, anybody that went. If they went into a restaurant, if they went into a museum, I mean, just anything. And so, but they also told me that they could have played in those games, but they would have had to been virtually isolated in the hotel rooms for all other, the entire rest of the time that they were there. So maybe that's what Memphis did. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it sounds, like I said, it's not my beat. I'm not going to investigate it, but
Sure,
it's certainly, it'd be a good story if I covered Memphis.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. All right, so the Memphis game is over. We don't expect the Tigers to be on, and you've been on this. You've talked about this for a while. It's a far greater benefit for Memphis to play Tennessee than it is for Tennessee to play Memphis in basketball or football, given where both the Tennessee football program is, and obviously with its tradition in the SEC, and obviously where Tennessee's basketball program is now. So there's no love affair and there's no great desire to play that game. So I don't think you have to worry about Memphis moving forward. Let's talk about what you do have to worry about moving forward if you're Tennessee. And that's a Wednesday night game against an Arizona team, Rob, that continues to climb in the rankings and continues to play really solid basketball, really good basketball. What are your takeaways from Arizona, and how big of a deal is it for Tennessee to get lathered up and not play and basically go a week here without playing a game?
I'm kind of interested to see that myself, because they were wound up Saturday. Talking to people around the program, they were locked in, they were excited. It was going to be a big time atmosphere. So, I don't, after that kind of letdown, I don't expect it to be a big deal, but you really kind of wonder, because the juices were flowing and they just said, they just had the plug pulled on them. I do know it looked like Monday they had a really energetic practice. Probably the best I've seen John Fulkerson look this season. I don't want to make a big deal out of that, because that always doesn't translate. But they were going hard. I mean, they went hard 5-on-5 for a long time. I mean, the guys certainly got a workout in. So I don't know that they'll be rusty. I mean, I don't think Arizona's played. They played one. They had a game on Saturday, but it was just a
Scrimmage,
directional school,
yeah,
pretty much. And but I tell you, this Arizona's a really interesting team. Tommy Lloyd, the head coach, was an assistant for 22 years at Gonzaga, and you look at this Arizona team, and it makes you think that Tommy Floyd was the guy that was heavily responsible for international recruiting, because Arizona has one guy who was born on U.S. soil, and 4 international players. I mean, they're from Cameroon, Lithuania, Canada, Estonia, all over the place, and they've got some size. I mean, I wonder how Tennessee can handle the size. It's not real athletic size, but they're big. They go 7'1", 6'11". They're starting post guys, and both of them pretty good rebounders, 6, 7, 8 rebounds a game. So to me, that's where the challenge starts for Tennessee.
Interesting when you have a core of international players like that. A lot of times you get guys who, like the open space. Some of those big guys can step out and shoot the basketball. When you look at Arizona, just kind of overall, you mentioned their size and what they do. I mean, style of play offensively, what do you expect from them?
I mean, I think they want to look a lot like Gonzaga. They're not going to be afraid to play a fast pace. As you mentioned, spacing, I think is a really big deal. And the big guys, at least one of the big guys, can shoot it pretty well, kind of like we've seen from those Gonzaga teams, and even outside of the post. I mean, they're big on the wings, 6'7", 6'6", a little bit like Texas Tech was, but I don't think they have that same kind of athleticism to go with that length that bothered Tennessee. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. I was talking with somebody in the sports information department today, and the reason I bring it up is going to be interesting to see how much Rick can go with that small ball lineup. But it's a smaller sample size because they've not played a ton of minutes together. But that group, I think, has the highest plus minus on the team, when those trio of Vescovi, excuse me, Kennedy Chandler, and Zakai Ziegler are on the floor together.
So that creates matchup problems both ways, right? I mean,
if
you go that way, I mean, that could affect Arizona's size on the offense, because Tennessee might be able to get in some dribble drive situations, right? Be able to beat them, maybe get up and down the floor pacing wise. But then on the other end, defensively, you would think Arizona could even post up some guards if they wanted to. If Tennessee went with that trio lineup, that could be an interesting defensive challenge for Tennessee.
It could. And my thing with posting up guards, I mean, everybody wants to say it. I mean, I do too. But really, I mean, how many college guards have good back to the basket games? I mean, how often do they work on that? I mean, there are some. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not a given. And on the other end, I'll be interested to see how Gonzaga defends with that much size and length on the floor, because they're not going to be able to switch everything.
Yeah, it's true. Close. I mean, yeah. So does Tennessee go a lot of high ball screen action and try to force guys to get through? I mean, it would seem to be maybe a heavy screen game for Tennessee. Not that the screen game is always there, but something where you might be able to create some mismatches because you can't switch, as you're talking about. Guys maybe can't get through the screen. Might create some open looks for you in that regard. Kind of an intriguing matchup. I don't want to take anything away from Arizona, Rob, but I mean, they're the seventh ranked team in the country that nobody seems to be much talking about, and I think that's in part because they play late night games. Not a lot of people have seen them a whole lot at this point. They're not into conference play, but they haven't generated a ton of buzz to be where they're ranked at this point. At least not that I've seen. Maybe that's unfair, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from them because I think they've certainly exceeded expectations. I mean, they were unranked in the preseason, but they got a lot of pop early on for beating Michigan when Michigan was ranked number 4. And, Michigan clearly is not that good, or at least they're not playing that good right now. And to me, I think their best win, given what we've seen from Michigan, and that was a neutral site game in the tournament, was last Saturday at Illinois. They won a tough road game against, I think, a pretty solid Illinois team by 4 points. So I don't necessarily think they're the seventh best team in the country. I think they're very, very solid. And as you said, nobody sees them play, and they don't have any big name recruits, guys, one and done type guys on their team. They've got all the a collection of all these international kids who have found their way to the desert.
Yeah, that nobody has any idea who they are, and they're still trying to figure out how to pronounce names and see exactly what they're about and what they're not about. I ask you this question seemingly every week. Is Rick's rotation changing at all, or do you think that he's kind of locked in where he's been locked in, and that's kind of where you're going to roll from there? How do you see this thing changing moving
forward? I think
forward?
He's going to keep playing all those guys, and I base this. He pretty much said as much on Monday, but then during Monday's practice, in addition to the usual starting 5 guys that got minutes wearing the quote unquote orange jerseys, first team minutes were Huntley Hatfield spent time in an orange jersey. Uros Plavsic spent time in an orange jersey. And to surprise him a little bit, although he got in the game early last week, Jemai Mashak getting some first team minute runs. And I think DJ Bailey is going to continue to play some. So, I mean, that's what, 9?
Yeah.
And Justin Powell is going to keep playing. So I never thought Rick was going to play 10, but I think he is going to continue to play 10 for now.
How big is this game for Tennessee as you get ready for conference play? I mean, how important is this game to kind of get yourself moving? I mean, this was obviously going to be a big week. Memphis, Arizona, then Alabama's there. The Memphis game being gone now. How big is this one particular game against Arizona as the kind of final game, if you will, before you get into league play?
Well, I think it's big for you nationally, perception-wise. I mean, this is going to mean if Arizona turns out to really be a top 10 team and they run through the Pac-12, then this is going to be a game that helps you a ton on Selection Sunday. And how many top 10? I don't know that you're going to get into the top 10 win in the SEC, except for maybe Alabama. I guess they fell 2-10 this week, I think, after losing to Memphis. I mean, that loss took a lot of shine off Alabama to me. So, Kentucky would be a good win if you get it. LSU would be a good win if you get it. But this would be one that would resonate, I think, with the NCAA committee, assuming, Arizona really is as good as they're ranked right now. So I think it'd be I don't want to overstate it, but it would be a pretty big deal to fluff up your national resume.
Yep, and a big time matchup. Then Alabama, I know we're going to talk about them, next week moving forward, but league play is here. One off for the Tide against Memphis.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I watched pretty much all that game against Houston, which was on Saturday night, I guess 3 or 4 days before, because pretty much just lined up perfectly with me getting home after Tennessee and USC Upstate or UNC Greensboro that day. And so I pretty much watched it from tip to buzzer against Houston. I was really impressed with Alabama. That was a big time basketball game. So then I'm ready to watch them against Memphis a few nights later. And it just doesn't look like the same team. I would probably throw it as a one-off, but at least maybe in the span of 4 days, they showed you their floor and their ceiling. Because I was stunned at the Memphis game, and that was a raucous environment. Memphis was desperate with their backs to the wall. They'd lost 4 in a row. Big time fan support in that building. But I was shocked that Alabama was. I don't know what the final score ended up being, but it was not indicative of how badly they got beaten.
Yeah, I mean they never got back in it really. I mean Memphis had control of that game seemingly from the opening tip, or felt that way. That Alabama never made a run. You kept looking for a run, and you didn't see a run there, coming for sure. Lastly, the identity of this basketball team offensively is, I know you've talked about Kumwa's got to be a guy that's really important and a post presence for some scoring. Bottom line, is this going to be a basketball team that if they shoot it well from the perimeter, they're going to be a hard out for any night, and if they don't shoot well from the perimeter, it's going to be hard for them to advance. Is that kind of the makeup of this team, you think?
I got the stat right here in front of me. In their 8 wins, Tennessee is shooting 39.6% from 3-point range. In their 2 losses, they are shooting 16% from 3-point range.
I guess we answered the question, right?
I think that's going to be the story of the year.
We'll see how Tennessee shoots it on Wednesday night against Arizona and their length, which will provide some challenges for Tennessee, but also some opportunities as well. We'll have full coverage of Tennessee and Alabama coming up Wednesday night. Let's turn our attention now to some football, a little football recruiting. Obviously, we'll have full coverage of Tennessee and Arizona basketball coming up on Wednesday night, but Tennessee on the practice field on this Tuesday, getting back into gear. They practice on Monday. We got a little access, chance to talk to players coming up a little bit later today. Josh Heupel will meet the media for a final time on Wednesday before Christmas. And then the next time we'll talk to the Vols will be in Nashville in the Music City Bowl. Austin, this feels like a pretty healthy football team right now. It also appears like a football team is not going to have Cade Mays in the bowl game. Is that a pretty safe assumption at this point, or is that still up in the air in your opinion?
I think it's still slightly up in the air. I won't rule Cade out yet. It is a healthy football team. I mean, you got Alante who's opted out, but other than that, I mean, everybody else seems like they're good to go, which is, better than, Purdue can say. I mean, they've got their best 2 players out in this football game. So be interested to see kind of where this thing, goes over the next, 10 days or so. But I mean, it certainly feels like, and, barring some kind of practice mishap, that Tennessee's going to roll in there with their full allotment of players on offense, minus maybe Cade, and then same thing on defense minus Alante Taylor.
Yeah, interesting at that cornerback position where Taylor will not play. It's going to be pretty fascinating to see what Tennessee does there. Is that by committee? It sounds like that might be by committee. This is a Purdue team that's going to throw it a lot more than they're going to run it. So the opportunities are going to be there at the cornerback position. Is this Kamal Hadden to start, you think, and in how he plays determines what a rotation looks like at defensive back? Or do you think Willie Martinez is going into this with a rotation? I'm assuming Kenneth George Jr. is out, okay, because he's not played in a month. So I would assume he's a non-factor here. So now you're talking about who playing corner if it's not Hadden?
Hadden, Turnage, Deshaun Rucker. I don't think it'd fall behind those guys. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's Hadden's to start. Willie's very much a guy that, earn it and prove it to him. And since, Hadden's kind of been that guy that's filled in when players have been, had to be out for a series of plays or whatever, I would venture to say he'll get the first crack.
Yep, we've not seen a lot of Kamal Hadden since the Kentucky game, where obviously he messed up that coverage on the 4th down play. They haven't needed him, but we'll see what happens there, as it's been a lot of Warren.
I would play him unless you get to that 4th and 24 range, Hubs, and then take him out.
Yeah, this seems like a team that's pretty focused, though. I mean, you talked to Theo Jackson last week. You talked to Amari Thomas and guys that you've spoken with. It feels like this is a team that this bowl game means a lot to the veteran guys, because I think for them, this is the completion of the job and of the journey, meaning you're going to leave this place better than it was over the course of the last couple of years. Fair statement or not a fair statement?
Very fair statement. I think there's some pride. I think they know getting to 8 wins is a nice accomplishment. And look, they all had pride to go out and win their last game at Neyland. I think much of those same group of kids have the same pride in just going out a winner, period. Like, nobody wants to lose their last college game. I mean, I know it's a bowl game. It's, a middle of the road bowl game, but nobody, I mean, like, if you're a competitor at all and you have any kind of competitive spirit in you, you don't want to lose this game.
Yeah, if you're dressed to play, you're dressed to win. Otherwise, no, you're not dressing. I mean, that's kind of where bowl games have gotten to. If you're not that uninterested in it, you're opting out if you're a veteran player. So if you're dressing, you're in it to win it. I totally believe that. Let's talk a little recruiting. Obviously, we're in the middle of a dead period now. Then it's going to open back up. We've seen about some potential official visitors out there. The Moton kids won. Anything else offensively you think from a visit standpoint, or does this thing feel pretty, I don't want to say set on offense, not that they wouldn't look out there, but you see anything else going on? I mean, Moton's kind of the only name that's generating some buzz out of high school players right now, right?
He is, I mean, like, that's the thing, is like the board's like, well, give us some names. Like, there are none. I've asked. I mean, like, that's the crazy part, is like, there's just not a whole lot of high school names. I mean, could Tennessee potentially take a swing at Jordan James? Maybe. We'll see. I think he's going to take visits in the month of January. And if he does that, if he does indeed do that, then, I could see Tennessee maybe taking a swing there. But do they take a third high school back, or do they wait and see who goes in the portal later? I mean, like, it doesn't have to always be black and white. Hubs, and that's the thing. It doesn't always have to be black and white when it comes to the portal, when it comes to how you recruit, and so things change all the time. And so I'll say this: I do think that they're gonna go in the portal pretty hard for a receiver when the right one goes in, and if the right one goes in the portal, then Tennessee, I think, will go really hard. But right now, again, they've evaluated the kid in Western Kentucky. That one's not one that they really are willing to go head over heels in on. I mean, like, it's just, that's just another body. That's taking a body to have a body. And then Jared Verse, that's the other big one out there besides Moton. So Tennessee's kind of in a wait and see mode. And it's as simple as that. I know that's hard to believe, but it just kind of is what it is.
Well, I mean, you are bouncing a little bit of numbers. I know that the math, I don't completely understand. I still think, up to 27 would be kind of where they would end up at. So I don't think you're just going to take guys versus making this travels from Arizona back to Albany and a lot of time to think in the car. And we'll see where kind of he's at on the way back in. He can't stop in and see anybody. I guess he could.
No, he's going from Albany to Arizona.
I mean, going to Arizona. Excuse me. Leaving Albany, going to Arizona.
I think he's supposed to arrive in Arizona today. I think spent Monday night in Denver, best I checked.
Okay.
Based on my talk with him a few days ago when he was laying out his travel plans, he wanted to stop in and eat in Kansas City. He's never done that. He wanted to stop in Denver, and so that was kind of where he was headed.
Yeah, so we'll see where that one's at. I still think there's a really good chance he's going to take that fifth official visit the first week of January when it opens up, and we'll see where that fifth official visit is to or isn't.
Yeah, the problem with that one, Hubs, and I don't disagree with you at all. The problem is he's had so many Floridas and Oklahomas and those type and Auburns that have all come in here on him. Like, how do you choose just one of those to go visit? Because he told me he's not taking more. I said, you won't go anywhere unofficially just to kind of get as many looks as you can. He said, no, it would be one official. He continues to say, I'm not even sure I will take that.
Yeah, and maybe he feels comfortable with what he's got. But again, his phone is ringing, the LSUs, the Floridas, Auburns, Oklahomas, and it's certainly giving him some things to think about and some.
Anybody that's got a lot of spots left.
Yeah, some schools that have spots left are certainly interested in him, and Tennessee obviously continues to try to recruit hard there. That one's gotten harder as more teams have gotten involved. There's no doubt about that. I'm sure Syracuse, Austin felt really good that first weekend. They got
Yeah.
on campus longer than anybody, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, that's probably not going to happen. Too many other schools jumping into the fray there. And then we'll see. As for this Tennessee current team, this affects numbers a little bit in terms of needs. Does everybody come back for the spring semester? They've got several weeks in the month of January to kind of decide what they're going to do there. They all going to come back? Are they not going to come back? Somebody going to leave after spring? Somebody going to leave before spring? That's always a possibility as guys continue to jump in the portal every day.
Well, and there you go. That you just hit the nail on the head, Hubs. I think that, one of the reasons that Tennessee doesn't have a ton of interest out there in guys, one, because they're not crazy about the ones out there, but two, because there's going to be this wave after bowl games. You're going to have about a 2-week run window for guys that go in and potentially land somewhere else really quick. And does someone fall your way there? Then you're going to have the wave that happens after spring practice, same type thing there. So, yeah, I mean, I just keep going back to, it's better to be more kind of thorough and methodical instead of just knee jerk with portal. I don't think you can live in it, but if you're going to spend a lot of time there, you better be methodical about it and not just, oh, that sounds like a good deal. And ripping that one off the shelf. And then you find out you overpaid.
Yeah, I mean, you got a guy in that cost you a spot and he can't help you. I mean, you just don't want to do, you don't want to get a guy in just to have a body in there. And I think that's the challenge for coaches out there is how selective are they going to be? Wide receiver, linebacker, defensive line, corner maybe, Austin, another offensive lineman. I mean, they've got plenty of things to kind of choose from. It feels like an outside receiver and then a guy off the edge / linebacker, kind of the biggest priorities for Tennessee. It feels to me like in terms of where things are in the transfer portal right now. So what that looks like moving forward, we'll have to wait and see. Tennessee does have several of those midterm guys on campus trying to get a little work in to see what some of those guys look like, let them get a feel for it. But Tennessee's very much into game prep mode for Purdue. That's what practice has turned into. The whole notion that this extra spring practice and all that this is about game planning now. When you look at the, just over a week before this game, Tennessee is diving in and getting ready for Purdue. So we'll have full coverage coming up of press conferences, as obviously players going to meet the media later today. And then on Wednesday, Josh Heupel meets the media for a final time. And then we'll have all of our coverage from Nashville as we'll be out there in full tilt, giving you all the coverage we can from everything that's going on in Nashville with Tennessee and Purdue, and maybe a little recruiting, and who knows what else is going on in Nashville while we're out there. We will cover all that for you. As we get out the door here, Austin, I do want to ask your thoughts on Tiger and Charlie Woods this weekend.
That was great, man. I really did. I text our buddy Brant Packer. I said, imagine if Stuart Sink wins this thing in a playoff over Tiger and Charlie. He would have beaten 59-year-old Tom Watson at the Open back in 2009 when nobody wanted him to win. Absolutely. And then would have beaten Tiger and Charlie coming off the car wreck comeback when nobody wanted him to win. Now, it ended up being John Daly. But, I mean, hey, man, it was great. He had some great shots. Charlie, his shot on 17 was as impressive as anything I've seen just because, the wind was coming off the left. He hit that ball and it landed 3 feet left of the hole. And when you factor in that he was playing not the up tees, because the Escalade was on the line, everybody played from the same place.
Right.
And he knocked that thing in there stiff, and they made the putt. And, they ended up going for the right thing. I know they didn't make birdie at 18 to make 12 in a row and finish at 26, but they were going to try to get in the playoff, and they had to hold that chip. And so they had to at least get it there. And so, but it was just good. I don't know when he plays again. Obviously, the cart was a huge help. I'd be fine if he just plays in this once a year. It's a little taste of something, nostalgia. It's kind of like, if MJ just played in a 3-on-3 game with his boys, people would watch, people love nostalgia, Hubs. And so like, I keep going back to, I've said this before, golf's got a lot of great young players, but the guys that move the needle are still 52-year-old Phil Mickelson and 46, almost 47 come later this week or later next week, broken down Tiger Woods. And like that to me is worrisome. I mean, again, golf's not dying. I don't think it's like NASCAR, but like you need somebody that moves the needle. And it may be before a guy like Charlie Woods comes along, before somebody moves the needle anyway. But hey, we'll take whatever we can get. I love to watch Phil play. I love to watch Tiger play, and bring on the Masters.
Yeah, well, that was fun this weekend. And I mean, I like that event. It certainly took on a different feeling to see that those two guys out there playing, and was fun to watch for sure. So back to football, back to basketball, back to recruiting. We'll have it all covered for you at Volquest.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the Smoky Mountain Organics Volquest.com podcast. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest podcast every week here on Volquest.